Welcome to the powder coating removal tutorial here. There are three different ways we can approach this. We can get rid of this stuff chemically, burning it off, or sandblasting. I own a sandblaster. It does not work. The problem is that the powder coat is sort of elastic. Every time something hits it, it does not impart its energy into it, and it does not really remove it. I could sit here and I'd be dead of old age before anything really happened or I finished an entire wheel. It just takes way too long. With burning it, you need an oven that can do 700 to 1,000 degrees. Plus this thing is pretty big, so an oven, unless you have a lot of money and you already have one, doesn't do us any good. So that leaves us with chemical. There are chemical dip tanks that you can dunk it in, but the chemicals alone, just the volume of this thing here, just to fully encase this with chemical, is like 30 gallons. At, you know, say it's a 50-50 mix of water and stuff, you need at least 15 gallons, you know, $40 a gallon for that stuff, you know, it's like $600. You can buy a whole wheel set, basically. That's pretty close to it. So we are going to use stripper. And I'll show you what kind I use in a little bit, but we're gonna prep the surface here to make this as easy as possible. And no matter what you do, this is gonna suck hardcore. It is not easy, it is not fun, you're not gonna like it. So if you're somebody that does not have elbow grease or a lot of it, pay somebody to do it, because this sucks. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to prep the surface here to get rid of as much of the finish. I have 3 layers. On this part here, I have basically just a clear coat. On these parts here, I have 3 parts. I have clear coat, I have a color coat, and then I have a primer underneath. And on the back side, you can't see, it's primer, it's 1 coat. So when you put stripper on, you can basically do 1 coat at a time, assuming you've done nothing to the surface. It'll ripple up the clear coat, and then any chemical you add after that, unless you remove the clear coat, is just going to attack the clear coat. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make it so that the stripper has as much advantage into getting as deep a penetration into the lower layers as it can. If it can't physically touch it, it's not going to work. So I'm going to prep it by sanding it really well. All right, so you can see I've added a little bit of stripper to these parts here. I had a little bit left over in my bucket when I was doing another wheel. And I just put some on because I didn't want to waste it. But you can do sandpaper. And I'm going to take these corners off. These corners have 3 different layers on it. I'm just going to take a razor blade to it and gouge through as many layers as I can, removing it so that the stripper has the best opportunity to get these corners off. These are one of the stubborn areas right here because it's got multiple surfaces for which it to grab onto, plus it's underneath, you can't tell because it's powder coated, but it's got a lot of little pores for stuff to grab onto, like Velcro. All right, we're outside. And why am I outside? Because this stuff is disgusting. Very, very bad stuff. All right, so I have 2 different kinds of things. I got this stuff, aircraft remover, and I have this stuff, which is the Ultra. Do not buy this stuff. It does not do much of anything to powder coat. Sorry for the road noise, people driving by. My chickens are crowing. So this stuff, I've seen gasket remover online. I haven't been able to buy it. Can't find it anywhere. The problem is they made methylene chloride illegal in like 2020. You can see non-methylene chloride. I don't know if this is a new kind of stuff. I've only seen it recently, so I'm guessing that it is. So I'm going to pour some of this crap in my bowl. I only have a little bit left, so I want to save it. This is my last wheel. And I'm going to use a toothbrush and put it on. You can put it on thick if you want. It'll keep it from drying more quickly. But to me, it just seems like kind of a waste because it just does the top layer. And if it can't get through it, you're just wasting stuff. So just put it on somewhat thick, but not overly thick. Oh my God, chickens, shut up. All right. They can hear me outside and they want treats. So I'm gonna go at the inside here and then I'm gonna flip it over and tackle the top side. And here's a big truck and trailer coming by. There's a stop sign right here in front of my house. It gets really obnoxious because I get to listen to everybody stop and accelerate for a pointless stop sign that makes no sense. All right, I'm gonna keep going with this. All right, I flipped it over and I'm gonna apply more. These spots in here tend to be a little tricky because it's hard to get a brush on them to strip away the old powder coat. So I'm gonna make sure I get this pretty well. It's not very warm out. I don't know if you can tell, but there's snow on the ground. And it's March here in Minnesota, so there's some hope that it's gonna get warmer soon, but today's not one of those days. It's probably between 10 and 20 degrees Fahrenheit right now. And it's a little windy. And after I put this stuff on, I'm doing all this outside, I'm gonna bring it back inside my shop and let it sit and eat away at the powder coat inside where it's warm, because it works better where it's warm. I mean, if you're in Florida, that's probably not an issue, but on this top layer, I only have the clear coat to go through, so I'm gonna put this on pretty thin. And then a brush should be able to take care of the rest. And these parts here where it's got 3 layers, I'm really gonna wanna make sure it sits. And then these little, oh, you can't see, maybe over here. And these little spots, when they powder coated it, I imagine a lot of powder resided here, and that stuff's pretty thick in that spot. So I'm gonna try to glob it on in those spots there. And then this valve hole, I can't get a brush in there very easily. So, and it sits like a pool, so it works pretty well in that spot. And I'm gonna keep going at this. And I'll show you the results after probably a couple of hours of sitting. You want to get to it before it dries, because then it's not as flexible. The paint or the powder coat, it's not as flexible and it's harder to remove. I've tried plastic, covering in plastic and just letting it sit so it doesn't dry out quite as quickly, but I didn't see a whole lot of good results from that. So it's a lot of work that didn't really show any results, so I'm not going to do it. All right, so I'm going to shut off the camera, and then in a couple hours, I'll show you what it looks like. All right, it's been 2 hours now. And here's the back side where we just have a single layer of primer, and it looks like it's coming up pretty good. What I have here, just a stainless steel brush. This thing comes in handy, believe it or not, and I've worn the heck out of it from this job, and I had it before too, so I used it prior to this. But it takes a lot of elbow grease, and you're going to be scraping at it. Scrape at it until nothing else comes up. Once the material stops coming off, that's a sign to say, hey, it needs more stripper. Finally, that thing shut off. That's my heater in the garage. My furnace. All right, this is where this little bit comes in handy. Gets in these little nooks and crannies where you can't really get this in very far. I'm not wearing gloves at the moment because I don't really like wearing them if I don't have to. I'm not planning on touching anything. You amaze at just a little bit of pressure can do, and that's a win without chemicals. If I can just do something through effort, that's a win, because that's an easy thing to do. Here's the front side, and it's not as good, but I'll keep on going after it with my brush. Front side is going to take a lot more effort than the back side. Once you've gone over this with the pretty coarse brush like this is, creates a lot of stuff, plus the stripper makes it easier to make some big indents in your finish so that the stripper can do a little bit more in the next coats. It's a little deceiving because it seems like you're doing nothing, but you are. This is another place where this little tip comes in handy here. It's a lot of effort. If you can't do that, you shouldn't be doing this. There's no magic bullet without spending a whole lot of money on equipment and stuff. It's just a lot of work. Here's the second coat or application. See, it's looking a lot better. And this top clear coat's coming right off now. This stuff here, finally getting down to the primer coat. You can see some of the gray showing through, that's the primer coat. All right, I'm on the last application here. I'll be glad to be done with this. My brush is starting to look like Andy Dufresne's rock hammer, but it's still working. And I'm going to get every last bit off. And if there's any left, then I was going to spot touch with a little bit of stripper and get those last little bits off. Shouldn't be too bad. Basically, there's just a tiny bit left of this after 4 wheels. This is a quart, I think. Yeah, quart. So I was diligent in not using it all up. If you had a lot more, it would probably go a little easier. You just really slop it on and you don't care about waste. But I don't feel like going out shelling out another $25 for another quart of it. You can see I'm getting down to the bare aluminum. Just a matter of scrubbing. You got to make sure you get it all off, even if you have a sandblaster like me. I'm going to sandblast for the sort of the surface prep for the next layer of powder coating, the new powder coat. This stuff is so soft now that you can sit there for a minute on one tiny little spot the size of a BB, and it'll just not go away. You can just scrape it off with your fingernail, but the sandblaster won't touch it. So sand it with your sandpaper, or scrape it off, or strip it off. All right, all that scrubbing with the wire brush is done. I'm gonna use this fairly aggressive Scotch-Brite pad. And it's really tough to see the areas that you might have missed, or little spots with all the paint junk on it. So I'm going to try to get rid of that. You can see a few spots. And then I'm going to spot strip those. All right, so I have 99% of it off. Now I'm going to clean it all off. Just some soapy water. And get all the stripper remains off. Then I'm going to rinse it off with some water. And then once I have it cleaned and rinsed off, obviously it's not cleaned and rinsed off, I'm going to go through and sand off any parts I want to make a little bit flatter. If there's any powder coat residue still left, and sand that off in those spots. And it will also create a nice profile for your powder coat to stick to. All right, I have the wheels cleaned up for the most part. I'm going to work on the outside of the rim that doesn't have any powder coating on it, just to get ready for new set. And here's my contraption that I made. Basically just a motor that I made out of an old drill press that was broken. And I have a foot switch on the ground. Spins it. I'm going to put it in a little faster speed here. There we go. Like so. And a little better. You can do this with just sandpaper, but without this machine, obviously, but this is a little easier. Something I just have lying around to sand large round things that don't fit in my lathe. I don't have it in there quite centered. That's why it's wobbling a bit. But it's good enough for a video. All right, you guys probably don't have one. This is my sandblasting unit that I modified to fit larger objects. Got some aluminum oxide in here. And what I'm going to do now is prep the metal for powder coating. You can see like this stuff is going to come all off. It's going to clean the metal really well, and it's going to etch it a bit so that powder coating can stick pretty well to it. So it does not take powder coating off very well, but it does clean up metal quite well. So I'll get to it. So here it is, mostly all done. You don't have to sandblast it. You could use sandpaper just as well, just to etch the surface. All sandblasting is just three-dimensional sandpaper, as far as I'm concerned. So it's mostly done. I'm gonna wipe it off with some water and soap and water, clean all the dust off from the sandblasting, and then it's time for powder coat.